Hello everyone, it's End Times Talk here, and I wanted to come at you with a video pertaining to the rapture, and I wanted to break down things a little bit more because my phone doesn't allow me a lot of time to record long videos, so I can't really just sit here and blab on, and most of you would rather watch a short video than a longer video anyways. I wanted to talk about the different events that have happened in the Bible, pertaining to a rapture happening. And we've discussed before in previous videos about the rapture, how a rapture is broken down into three parts: that God is physically removing, which is one; whom he declares to be righteous, which is two; outside of his impending judgment, which is the third part. So basically, we're going to start with Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. Angels went to Abraham and were talking to him about wanting to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and he said basically to the angels, is God really going to judge the righteous with the wicked? And he said, it'd be far from God to judge the righteous with the wicked. And he said, if there be 50 people in Sodom, would God spare that city? And he said, yeah, I'll spare the city. He said, if there be 40 people, would God spare the city? He says, yes, I'll spare the city. He said, if there be 30 people, if there be 20 people, if there be 10 people, and even God said that, or the angel said that they would spare the city if there be 10 righteous people. And when they finally got to Sodom and Gomorrah, they found only Lot as righteous. Okay, so they told Lot, hey man, you got to go. Like, we're going to destroy this place. And so they told him to go even round up all of his relatives. And he went out that night and tried to round them all up, but nobody listened. Just like the watchmen who are telling everybody, like, hey, trouble's coming, but no one's listening. And so Lot left the city with his two daughters and his wife, and a lot of people wonder, well, why did Lot's wife turn to a pillar of salt? It's because she looked back at Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, when the angels were very specific in saying, don't look back at Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed. But a lot of people are like, well, why did she look back? She looked back because her other relatives were still there. And so even though, people are caught up in sin, you can't allow yourself to be caught up in their sin, and them being where they're at turn you back to sin. It's kind of symbolic of that, in my opinion. Okay? And so, Lot left the city, and that is constituted as a form of a rapture. Now, in the situation with Moses on Mount Sinai, with meeting God at the top, God called Moses to the top of Mount Sinai, and it said that God came down to the top of from heaven to the top of Mount Sinai, and Moses went up. So they met in the clouds. The mountain being that middle spot. There's plenty of mountains that go to the clouds. So you can't tell me that it wasn't a form of a rapture. Also, with Moses, there was the 10 plagues of Egypt that happened, and a lot of people don't know that the Jews that were in that area at the time weren't even living in Egypt. They were in the land to the north called Goshen, okay? Goshen, Goshen. And it blows my mind that people kind of lump the Jews in with the Egyptians, and they think, oh, well, all the cattle and all these plagues were happening to the Jews. They weren't. These Jews were spared from all the 10 plagues of Egypt because of them living outside of that and being found righteous by God. Same with, the blood on the doorpost. All that put the blood on the doorpost, their firstborn child was spared when the angel of death came through. So that's another form of rapture. Okay, then you have Elijah, who was just taken. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Then you have Enoch that was just taken. That's pretty self-explanatory. Then you have Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, and the Ethiopian eunuch was reading the book of Isaiah in a chariot at the time, and Philip, being found righteous, was literally transported from one city to another, and there wasn't really any judgment to be had, but kind of like Elijah and Enoch, he was found to be righteous, and he was found preaching in another area. So even Philip was transported and was raptured, if we go by the criteria of the rapture, of the three parts here. And so on, we have multiple instances where people have been physically removed, okay, outside of an impending judgment, or just because they're being found righteous. And people sit there and say there is no pre-tribulation rapture. It boggles my mind how people reason this. But if you look at the Bible, there's raptures all throughout the Bible, and what we're waiting for is the last one, like the big enchilada. This is the one where hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to be taken off the planet all at once. But I've said this in other videos, and I'm going to say it again, that not all Christians are going to be taken. There was 10 virgins, and only 5 were taken by the groom, and 5 were left because they were not ready. They did not have their lamps filled with oil. 2 were grinding at the mill, 1 was taken, the other was left. 2 were plowing in the field, 1 was taken, the other was left. This is symbolic. Not all Christians are going. I say this not to scare you, but to prepare you. I want you to get the sin out of your life so that way you can be rapture ready. Look at Malachi chapter 3, verse 16. It says, those that feared the Lord spoke often to one another and thought often upon his name, and a book of remembrance was written before God to remind him of those that fear the Lord and spoke often about his name to one another. And it says that the Lord hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him, and that on the day when God makes up his fine jewels in heaven, that God would spare those people that feared him. And it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, that he would spare those people that feared him as a father spares a son who serves him. So it's obvious you need to be an active Christian, be filled with the Holy Spirit, and be about the Father's business to be written in the book of remembrance. So I implore you to go out and be the Christian God has always intended you to be, because the rapture is real and it's coming and it's pre-tribulation. We are not appointed to God's wrath, and God cannot judge the righteous with the wicked, because that is far from God's plan. And I hope that this blesses you, and that may God bless you and may God keep you, and thanks for watching once again.